Are collaborations in sneakers played out? We're going to talk about it this time on Fire Footwear. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Fire Footwear. As always, I am your host, Matt. I want to welcome you back if you have been a long-time listener of the show. And if this is your first time, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's in Apple, Spotify, whatever, I just want to say thank you. Did you notice that I flubbed that a little bit? Sometimes it doesn't go perfectly. What can I say? But we're sitting here and I'm trying to get ahead on an episode. Last week, I talked about Kanye West. I talked about him coming back to sneakers and how, for me anyway, it was a little bit awkward and people feel away. I think a lot of people, more than I thought anyway, are into his shoes. They're going to buy it because the price is low. And like I said, everybody is entitled to their own opinion. Everybody certainly can do whatever they want to do. I just was making my opinion known because I think that it's really, really important that we stand on our square and we stick to our guns with things that we believe. But I want to move on to something that maybe feels negative, but it's definitely more positive, because I think if you're talking about something that is politically charged or adjacent to politically charged, it takes a little bit of the steam out of this podcast. It takes a little bit of the steam out of the escape that we all are looking for when it comes to sneakers and podcasts and stuff. And I want to talk about collaborations because I have been watching over the past year, actually maybe 2 years, all the collaborations that are coming out and trying to look at the response that's happening. When I look at the sneaker market, I look at collaborations as having a relatively small piece of the pie as it relates to total volume of shoes. I think GRs are going to take up the main space of that, and I think that is the point. Collaborations, though, take up a very large share of the hype around sneakers. It's what makes people talk. It is something that gets clicks on social media, and it really drives a lot of what makes people want to be in sneakers. And I don't think that that's deniable. When you're scrolling through sneaker Twitter, when you're scrolling through Instagram, what are the shoe releases that really pop up for you and make you stop and think, ooh, I have to have that? I would venture a guess that unless you're an old head in this and you see a retro of a Jordan coming out that maybe you don't have, or maybe the pair that you have had is falling apart. Other than that, I think when we see collaborations across the board, especially when they're big name collaborations like your Travis Scott's, Joe Freshgoods, I think that makes people stop and notice. And I do believe that it drives a lot more traffic to people actually buying shoes than just a GR release or even a retro. When collaborations first started, and let's think about Run DMC and Adidas way back in the day, who were the first rap collaborators in sneakers, what was the point of that? The point was to make something special or make something feel special. When you take somebody at a higher stature, whether it's a rapper, whether it's a movie star, or whether it's somebody that has a recognizable place in pop culture, when you add that person's name and likeness and their aura around something, it makes it feel special. If you have a Broadway play or an off-Broadway play that's happening in your local area, and Tom Hanks happens to show up and be a part of that, it makes it feel a lot different. Case in point, Mumford & Sons was playing the other night, not a band that I like, but a band that I am at least aware of. They were playing in New York, I believe, and they do the theme song to Ted Lasso, and look who came out, Jason Sudeikis, who plays Ted Lasso. What happened? That went viral. People felt differently about it. That concert was elevated. It was no different, no doubt, musically than any other concert that Mumford has played recently. But you put that star power on it, you put that recognizable name, and guess what happens? Boom, the concert becomes different. That's what collaborations are all about. And so as we have moved through the years, as we have had more and more collaborations, the volume of collaborations has increased. What I think is actually happening is people are getting desensitized to collaborations. It makes me sad to think about that, because if I look at my collection, it is a smattering of GRs, of retros, and collabs. Collabs are supposed to feel special. The reason being is because what we're supposed to see in a collaboration is something that we wouldn't normally see on what I would consider a retail shoe. If we walk into a Dick's Sporting Goods, a Foot Locker, a DTLR, the smattering of shoes that's there are going to be general releases. It's shoes that we're going to see the same colors, the same blocking, similar materials, and collaborations are supposed to elevate that, not only by name, but by execution. A really great example of that in recent times is the Mocha Travis Scott 1, the high top. The materials on that, the execution of it, it was top notch, and it's what made it seem like something that was elevated from a regular Jordan 4. If you took that colorway, flipped the swoosh back around, and gave it a brown color blocking, you're probably not going to get the same materials. It's not going to have the same kind of leather. It's going to feel and look like a GR. People aren't going to care about it. So when you have these collaborations, when you have these new looks and you give people the opportunity to take risks, to do new things, to try things, what it does is it elevates. And the reason that people feel hyped about it is the name combination and knowing that they're going to get a different product. What I have found to be the case over the years is that much like everything in life, we have too much of a good thing. I think Nike is probably a little bit more guilty of this than others, because if you look at even just basketball shoes, what used to be true back in the day was you'd see a limited amount of colorways. The point was, hey, this is a particular shoe, here's a few colorways, they're not as easy to get, and people wanted them. Now we have an oversaturation of everything, including GRs. So this is not just collaborations feeling stale. It's getting to the point where even GRs are feeling stale because there's so many of them. And in the human psyche, in today's world especially, when you look at the attention span, and that even is for this podcast too, the reason that this podcast is 15 minutes long or around that is because I know people have short attention spans and their time is limited. I know people commute, and I know that people doom scroll for hours and hours and hours. But if you think about everything that they consume in that time period, it's a lot because it's all little snippets of things. We're getting back to where some long form content is making a difference. And that's why these 15-minute videos are doing a little bit better than some of my 8-minute videos. But still, as a concept, we have short attention spans. And when we talk about that in the realm of sneakers, when we look at social media, when we see all the early leaks, we see all the mock-ups, we see that, we process it, and then we move on. We're looking for the next fix of dopamine. And collaborations were meant to give us this heightened sense of dopamine that wasn't instant gratification and didn't last forever. And that meant that we were going to have to take this collaboration, we're going to have to soak it in, we're going to have to understand it, digest it, and actually wear it in a way that's going to make us appreciate it for a longer stretch of time. That's the point of collaborations. They weren't supposed to be easy. They weren't supposed to be as attainable. But when you got them, the sense of satisfaction that you received was supposed to be higher. Nowadays, when you take a Travis Scott, for instance, what we're trying to achieve is accessibility for everybody. And maybe not for each individual colorway, but across the gamut of Travis Scotts. The reason why they have printed and made so many colorways of the Travis Scott 1 Low is one, because they continue to sell and they continue to make money, but also because it's allowing people an opportunity to get something that they felt like they didn't have a shot at. So when you had the Mocha Low Jordan 1, that was something that felt unattainable. People had a hard time getting it. Now, fast forwarding 7 years later about, what you're seeing is that, well, there's going to be another one. I'm going to have another chance at getting it, watering down the brand. Maybe not on the balance sheet, but in people's minds. And now look at Action Bronson, who, when he started doing collaborations with New Balance, it felt new. It felt fresh. And now you're getting, 3 or 4 colorways a year? Same with Joe Freshgoods sometimes. You're getting a lot of colorways. We have too much of a good thing. It doesn't make it feel special anymore. It just makes it another cog in the wheel, and we're just waiting out our turn to get something that we've never had. Ama Manier went through the same thing. I wanted an A Ma Maniére pair of something, so I just settled for the Jordan 4, which I really like. It was the pink one, and that was one that everybody hated. See what I mean? We're just settling for it. Well, I have an A Ma Maniére. And I think the same thing would actually go for the Yeezy from last episode. People are like, hey, the 800, $55. I can actually say that I own a Yeezy at some point in my life. And again, it waters down the idea of what it is supposed to be. Now, a Yeezy or something like that is a brand in and of itself. So it's going to have a longer shelf life, a much larger volume. But I'm taking it down to individual creators who are getting this opportunity that not everybody gets to make anything, and they're doing it at a smaller scale. Your Action Bronsons, your Joe Freshgoods, J-Tips, even Travis Scott to an extent when he first started. Now what you're seeing with Travis Scott is they're going back to the beginning because they've done so much with everything. Well, let's go back to the Air Force One because that's where he started. So now we're going back in a circular way. What I fear about this is that these collaborations are going to continue to get more and more saturated. We're going to feel less and less excited about them, and collaborations are almost going to become GRs. Maybe that's a doomsday look at it because I think people will always like collaborations because, again, there is still that sense of elevation that comes with them. But I don't know if we're getting the satisfaction that goes along with them. Remember, the Kids of Immigrants collaborations from 2024, hottest shoe. Everybody thought sneaker of the year. And when you see another one coming out, there's a space between it. People feel excited about it. But what's going to happen is, well, we've made 2 hits. Let's make more so that now we get them more frequently. We're going to give people smaller, more frequent doses of dopamine, and that's going to make them excited. That's going to bring up hype. I actually think it does the opposite. Now, I could caveat all of this by saying that I'm not in the boardroom. I'm not sitting in these financial meetings. And so I could be completely off base with this because at the end of the day, like I said last week, and like I say all the time, it's about the bottom line. It's about how much product is moving and how much is selling. And if you look at Nike specifically, they are struggling in many ways. And I think one of them is marketing. And I don't think that they have a connection with their customer the way that they once did. So what are they going to do? They're going to try anything. And here's a good example of that. The M&M Jordan 4s, which again, similar to the other unicorns that have come out, like the Undefeated 4s, like the Wu-Tangs, they're going to take everything that they can that always felt special, that was a unicorn. They're just going to release it. They're just going to make it available. So what it does is it makes these collaborations, which have sat in this space, this ether of places that people knew about, they had a reverence for, but they knew they weren't going to get it. Now everything is attainable. There's something to be said about lessening the barrier of entry into sneakers. Had a commenter a couple weeks ago when I talked about prices say that the Nike Mind had a chance of bridging the gap between younger people and this current mid-level generation that's in my age gap, but that Nike is pricing them out and the availability is not as high, so people can't get into the game. They can't enter in a way that feels attainable. And I think that there is merit to that for sure. There has to be some gateway that's going to allow new people in or is going to allow people the ability to get in. But at the same time, I don't think collaborations are that. I think that we need to refocus the efforts into making people feel happy about GRs again. Because look, there are a ton of fire GRs. There are a ton of fire available GRs. And even if they shrunk down the profile of GRs in terms of colorways and accessibility, I think that there would still be a lot of GRs to be had. There would still be a lot of accessible, available colorways out there. If you just walked into a DTLR, you just walked into a Nike outlet, they would be there. I think we need to reframe our mind a little bit to be excited about the usual, not just the unusual. And then I think if that happens, and we see these companies scale back a little bit to where we're getting maybe one collaboration a year, it gives people time to appreciate it over a longer period of time, to actually be excited about it, to be satisfied. And that is a microcosm of where we are in society, is there is no satiation, there is no satisfaction, because we're always looking for the next fix. And even YouTube understands that by making it harder to monetize. They're making it twice as hard to monetize because they know that there are so many people putting in low effort to try and just put out volume after volume after volume and just get that dopamine hit and get people on to the next one. And that's where we are. We don't appreciate things. Even in the content space, we don't appreciate things. And when I look at collaborations, I hope that we're going to get back to a place where they feel special. And you don't have to actually have them for them to feel special. It's the idea around them. It's the idea that at one time, the Union Jordan 1 had 2 colorways and they were basically perfect. And people thought that they were basically perfect. And now, fast forward, we have too much of a good thing. And you could say that about every collaboration, but I think we need to get back to the idea that there are a ton of sneakers available. And even if we shrunk it down, GRs carry the volume, they carry the weight of sneakers. And even if they don't carry the hype, that doesn't make them any less valuable in this space and doesn't make them any less fire on your feet. Buy what you want, wear what you want, but don't just settle for something that's popular. Don't just settle for the fact that it has to have a name involved in it. Find your dopamine fix for yourself, make it personal, make it subjective to yourself. And no matter what happens there, no matter what shoes you're able to get, no matter how many collabs come out, you'll find satisfaction in your sneaker collection. And that's what it's all about. Getting to that sneaker love and just living this culture for the right reasons, and that is loving the shoes for yourself and yourself only. I hope this finds everybody well. I hope this finds everybody safe, and I'll talk to you next time. This is Fire Footwear.